Hi, and welcome to a Small, Medium, at Large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Hayssen, bringing you intimate stories that heal. I want to thank all of you listeners for sharing, subscribing, commenting, and bringing us past 1,000 subscribers in our first year. Today, we have a very special guest, and I'm going to tell you all about Marguerite Rigoglioso. She's the founding director of the Seven Sisters Mystery School, which her intention there is to help empower you as a person of spirit. She is also a scholar and practitioner of the ancient Mediterranean mystery traditions. She's authored the Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece and Virgin Mother, Goddess of Antiquity, pioneering books that explore women's shamanic abilities in an evolutionary new light. Her latest book, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary and the Secrets of Virgin Births, has won 3 awards. It was the finalist in the Next Generation Indie Award. She was the 18th Annual American Book Festival Best Book Award. And recently, she's won the Silver Award winner in Nautilus Books. Marguerite has taught unique, leading-edge courses on the sacred feminine and women's spiritual leadership at various universities and graduate schools in the San Francisco Bay Area and at Canterbury Christ Church University in the UK. She holds a doctorate in humanities and a master's in philosophy and religion from the California Institute of Integral Studies, as well as a bachelor's degree in psychology from Vassar College. Let's welcome Marguerite here today. Hi, Marguerite.
Hi, Gail. What a delight to be with you.
It's just wonderful. I have to tell our audience that I have not seen Marguerite in many years, but she used to attend a conference and do her presentations in the shamanism conference in San Rafael, where we met. And I had just noticed that she had a new book out. So I contacted her and hoped that we could talk about her book today. But before we get to the book, I always like to tell one little story about how we know each other. And also, I'd like to follow that up with how she became on this path. The last time that we saw each other, you talked about a very interesting project you were doing, and I was hoping you could tell me what happened, even though this was some years ago. And I was fascinated that you were doing this job, which you had taken on yourself, to go and do prayers for the prisoners at San Quentin here in the Bay Area. And I thought that was a very open-hearted, loving thing to do, and something I'd never even thought about, sending prayers to prisoners. So wow. I was just wondering if you could just give us a little highlight on how that went. And then I'd love to go into how you got on this path.
Yeah, I think that might have been back in 2015. I had been living in the Bay Area for about 15 years at that point, maybe a little more. And I was in Marin for 8 years, Marin County. And so often I would be going up 101, over the bridge, into Marin. And it eventually occurred to me, my gosh, I'm going right by the exit for San Quentin. And then a few years later, it was like, oh my gosh, that is San Quentin that I'm looking at over there, this big prison complex, kind of infamous in a way. And then I thought, this is crazy. I mean, here we are going up to white elite land in Marin, and there is this house of suffering, with largely people of color right on the edge. And where are the links? Who's helping, And it turns out that thankfully, San Quentin, unlike some of the other California prisons, was a little more of a public profile, and it had more connections with people who were going in and trying to bring their healing gifts and so forth to these men in blue and so forth. But I didn't really know anything about that. I only came to know more about it as I then decided I am feeling inspired to do a healing ceremony for San Quentin. I had done a lot of walking up Ring Mountain, which is an ancient sacred Native American site where they have fertility symbols and things up there, and you can see San Quentin from down there. So I said, okay, we're going to have a big walk up this mountain, and then we're going to do prayers toward and for these men, and have people inside in the prison receiving and leading things for the men directly. And I was connected with the San Quentin News. I don't know if they still have it, but it was a newspaper at the time. We advertised this. I think we had about maybe 50 people come and join us. We also buried a peace vase. Cynthia Jewers had been connected with this long ancient tradition somewhere in the, Asia. And we would, put all sorts of things in it and bury this. We did a peace pole. David Nickel did a peace pole that we put in there. And we had some people inside the prison, and we were, offering prayers. And then some of them were offering prayers to us, because they're like, yeah, okay, white girl, this is not just a one-way street. Thank you very much for your bleeding heart liberal energy, but and so, but it was really beautiful and well-meaning. And apparently inside the prison, some of the men in blue who were involved were quite moved by it. And then I had gone in at least once for the Shakespeare play that was done by Soraya Keating, and it was such an unbelievably moving type of experience. So that's what we did from across the bay on one fine, sunny, thankfully day, back, I believe, in 2015. And the proceeds went to the San Quentin News. I had a little entry fee for it, and that money went to the San Quentin News.
Wonderful. I'm just saying, I was thinking you were doing such amazing work back then. And I'm so glad to hear that. I just think it was just a beautiful, just for the idea that you came up with, that was a real heartfelt, healing, loving, kind thing to do, which is the kind of person that I believe you are.
Oh, thank you. It was a really heartfelt thing. I felt divinely inspired by it. And for whatever good it did, may those ripples continue to go out.
Yes, and it was a beautiful example of ways that we can help others from a distance.
Yes.
And that's also an important thing to know. Now, you have done so many things, your school, your books, your talks, your classes. When did this occur? Like, were you a child who in your childhood said, this is my path, I know that I want to be following a path of helping others and doing things for others and researching it? Because you really research the mysteries of the ancient times. And I'm just wondering, as a girl, like, were you reading King Arthur, or were you reading books of I loved fantasy books and things like this? So what kind of childhood and life did you grow up in that led you to this path, or did this something that happens just in your adult life?
Right. Well, it's funny, because just literally last week I was remembering that whenever I thought of what I wanted to do as an adolescent, a young person, these are the following words that would come out of me. I want to help people. So clearly this was a mission that I came in with, that's been with me for a long time, and it's morphed as to what that means. At first it was go get a psychology degree and try to do counseling with people. But, over time it was like, well, that's not exactly it either. And, just from all the trauma that I had experienced and witnessed around me, I knew there was a strong need for people to be helped, to have emotional healing, and for me to do it myself, and then, be offering whatever I knew to others. And so, over the years, I did get a psychology degree, but I decided, no, I didn't want to go into clinical psychology. And I didn't really even want to go into psychology as a therapist. I went through this winding, meandering road that led me into the acting profession, that led me into the writing profession, and that eventually led me into the spirit profession.
Very nice path. And it's like you were building a foundation
Yeah.
to do all these things, because
Yeah.
even the psychology education, anything that you learned there would help you in developing your school or relating with other people. So this
Exactly.
seems like you've really been on the path since adolescence. And I understand those words of mine was I wanted to help heal people when I was a teenager. And I was doing it through these remote healings that you would do with people and just spread light on them and do different things
Oh,
like this.
I
And
love that.
I did hundreds and hundreds of bodies back then. And from when I was 16 to about 17 and a half. And
Wow.
it was a very interesting experience that led me on to all these other things. But I'm just
Right.
saying that it seems that I find that when I interview people, there were things in their childhood or their early young years that really was a foundation that brought them into the next things they do now.
Yeah.
So I want to go to the book that you've written, your most recent book, but I'd like to find out what made you want to write a book like this. And then we can ask questions about the book itself, because this is a very, I came from an atheist background. My father was raised in a somewhat religious Jewish household, and he decided to raise us with as atheists with no belief in God. So I never had any religious experiences. And I went to temple a few times that I remember, to the synagogue. And then I once went, we lived a few blocks from St. Andrew's Church, which was a Catholic church. And I went there one day with a friend because I wanted to know what went on inside a church, because I'd never been in one. And when I went in, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just following my friend. And I took this little wafer thing that I guess is like a communion or something. And when I went back and told my grandmother that I'd gone to a church and I'd taken this wafer and the body and soul of Christ, she told me I needed to fast for 40 days to rid myself of this sin.
Get it out of your system.
And, that was that I'm just letting you know that until listening to the podcasts that were about your book and reading some of your book itself, I don't have any information. I don't know anything about Mother Mary, or I just know I've heard about that there was an Immaculate Conception. But other than that, I know nothing about this area. So this has been fascinating for me to read about. And I have all kinds of wonderful questions about it. But first I need to know what led you to do this kind of research, because you don't do anything. These are not fly-by-night things. The things that you do are heavily researched, and they're backed by, other credible scholars. So I want to know what and how long did you do this research to decide to make this book?
Yes, well, I started it back in 2001, if not earlier. And I believe it was like that January, I was finishing up my master's degree at CIIS. And I was already studying into ancient goddesses, ancient priestesses all around the world. I was big time into the sacred feminine, even before I came to grad school, when I was still living in Massachusetts in the Boston area. And so I was into the sacred feminine on intellectual means and also experiential means, especially once I started opening through to sacred medicines, where I would have expanded states of consciousness and so forth. So in California, that's where that really took root. And there was this one day I was completely sober, but I had been researching the completion of my master's thesis on Demeter and Persephone, the goddesses of Greece, who were also in Sicily. And I had been reading this one book where the scholar was talking about, this Demeter and Persephone mother-daughter lineage story is one of parthenogenesis, where Persephone is really born out of Demeter without any male help at all. And just the way she was writing about that, I had this chink, my crown open, downpour. Oh my God, virgin birth was a real thing. It was an altered state experience, which I knew from having done medicines where it was like, ooh, tilt. And it was like tilt. And I thought, oh my God, this is real. So then I started researching ancient Greece, and I knew that I wanted to do my doctorate, which I kind of, rolled right into, on priestesses of ancient Greece. I was going to do a whole catalog of every single possible thing that had been said about priestesses. Well, I had this thesis in the back of my mind as I went through all that material. What did I find? Truckloads, boatloads of information suggesting that divine birth was alive and well in the ancient Greek tradition, not only in legend, not only in myth, but also in history. And of course, right on the heels of that, it was like, oh my gosh, this is the foundation for Mother Mary. Mother Mary did not act alone. She wasn't the only one. And, but she was like a major player in this regard. But it helped me understand, by looking at all the Greek material, what she was doing and what she was all about. So when it came time to look at the suppressed infancy gospel about her, it's called the Infancy Gospel of James, supposedly written by a James. I knew how to decode all the information in there, all the signs, all the symbols, down to the littlest fragrance, because all of that was material that I had learned about through the ancient Greek tradition. So I said, oh my gosh, I know why Mother Mary was, being fed by the hand of a bird. I know, why her mother kept her off the ground, why this, why that. And I wanted to include that in my dissertation, but it was already 600 pages without even going into Mother Mary. So I said, let me hold off. So for 10 years, I was teaching about Mother Mary and how the evidence of her divine birth and her infancy gospel. But it wasn't until 2019 that I started writing about it. Got my book contract in 2020, right after what exploded onto the planet. And then it got published, I believe, in 2021. And so, it's been a long journey with talking about this, teaching about this. I have a course, the Mother Mary Mystery Teachings, and so that's how and why I got involved with Mother Mary, not only on the level of divine birth, but then I started looking at her other biographical material, and that's going to be for my next book on her.
Well, today is the 7th of December, and tomorrow is going to be December 8th, which I hear is the feast day of Mary's Immaculate Conception.
Yeah.
I have no idea, but since this is the day before that, can you tell me what that is?
Yes.
What that is about?
So it's a Catholic doctrine, meaning that Mother Mary was born without sin. So it's really referencing her birth by, guess what? She had a mother named Anne, something that you never hear about in the Christian Bible or anywhere else, except for this apocryphal text that I'm talking about, the Infancy Gospel of James. So the idea that Mother Mary, the Catholic rendering of it, it's like a very narrowing. They're like, she was born without sin. But what that means, according to my research, is that she was divinely born by her mother Anne. And this is what is exactly corroborated in this Bible, in this gospel, this suppressed gospel, that Anne has a whole experience of virgin conception of Mary. And that's really what half of the book is about, the mystery tradition of miraculous conception, my book that you talked about. What happened there? I analyze every little line and word to show you what Anne was doing. And Mary is born of that without any male involvement at all. The reason why in my view, the Catholic Church connects that with, quote, the Immaculate Conception, saying she was born without sin, is that these beings, these children who are born parthenogenetically, virgin conception, are very high holy beings. They are what I would call avatars. So in a sense, her being born without sin is correct in that she was already a very high vibrational being. She had already perfected her karma, through lifetimes and lifetimes. And here she was coming in a lineage of divine birth priestessing for a specific purpose, which was, boom, to get planet Earth back on track by bringing in a high holy being who ended up being named Yeshua. So really, the feast day of Immaculate Conception is about Anne's conception and birthing of Mary. It is not about Mary's birthing of Jesus, which is the common thought about it, even though the Catholic doctrine isn't even that. So we're talking about December 8th being the day honoring Mother Mary's coming to the planet and being a very high holy being by virtue of the fact that she was divinely born. Then on December 25th, we honor her birthing of the being that she divinely conceived, Jesus.
So this was one of the fascinating things that I found in listening to some of the other podcasts that you were a guest on, was that I'd always wondered that, I always knew that about the Catholic religion, that there was this Immaculate Conception that I heard, but I'd always wondered, how come there was only one? That didn't seem right to me, that there would only be one. And what you're saying to me is that this is not the only one of this type of birth that occurred.
Not at all. And Anne is not the only one, because stated in the canonical Christian Bible is Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist, who also in her, quote, postmenopausal years conceives John the Baptist without any male assistance. And prior to that, in the Hebrew Bible, in the Hebrew tradition, we've got Sarah, the wife of the biblical Abraham, who conceives Isaac that way, among other stories in the Hebrew Bible. So they did not act alone. They were lineage holders of this practice that goes way far back beyond the conception of Judaism even.
Wow. So can you tell us something about that? Like, what was this lineage about, and what have you discovered? And also, were there many countries or many other places that, can you share with the audience where did you find these other stories?
Yes, it's a worldwide phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And you find stories of divine conception everywhere. It's at the basis of Buddhism, because the Buddha was said to have come out of Maya's side. And what I've learned in my research is that whenever you have these strange birth stories or these strange conception stories, they are referencing divine conception and birth. So Maya gave birth to Buddha, quote, out of her side. Zoroaster, came from a falling star. There are these stories of whose mother drank soma and conceived this being. We have the peacemaker in the six-nation Iroquois Confederacy known as the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Their peacemaker who came in perhaps around 1200 of the Common Era was known to be divinely born by his mother. Krishna, we have all these stories all around the world of these divine conceptions, Augustus Caesar, etc., etc., etc. So this has been going on for quite some time, even in the historical, legendary material. And then if you want to really start going back into what's accepted as history on the planet, namely things like Atlantis and Lemuria, you start intuiting other stories. Now, in fact, there's a very worldwide story that the seven mothers of the world are the Pleiades, the Pleiadian sisters. They were virgin mothers, and they seeded humanity. Okay, this is in the Greek story, and it is all throughout many different. The Cherokee believe they come from the Pleiades. There's a Pleiadian story in the Lakota. Every continent has these Pleiadian stories as well. So virgin birth is at the core of humanity's origins, as well as humanity's subsequent rise and decline. And every time humanity is declining, you have this priestesshood getting activated to bring in avatars to lift humanity back up. Jesus would be that case, John the Baptist, and so forth.
Well, it seems we're at a point in the world right now where we need another one of these to come dropping in.
Definitely need a good avatar or two.
Yes.
To come in, for sure. So, Mother Mary herself was that avatar. She was female. There have been female ones. And yes, this is why I think the veil is lifting on divine birth.
Is your book the first book of this kind that's ever been written?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, you would say my first one was really The Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece. That's really the first one that was written to talk about virgin birth as a real priestess practice. Now, there were other books that have been written, like Mysteries of Human Reproduction by Raymond Bernard, that references this. Drunvalo Melchizedek references divine birth in his Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. There's another book, and it's in my cabinet, about like the 13 virgin births of the earth and things like that. So it has been discussed, but it's never been discussed as a bona fide priestess practice that is something beyond just happenstance miracles that might happen to some women.
And why do you think that, like, I've never heard much, I don't know the research, but I've never heard much about this Immaculate Conception and birth. Was this something that, all this information, has this been kept hidden, or was this changed, or what happened?
Well, just speaking culturally and historically, we've been in patriarchy. We've been under patriarchy for several thousand years, at least 3,000, if we look at Maria Gimbutas's archaeological research in Europe. Under patriarchy, women's concerns, issues, matters, values, and so forth go missing. They get suppressed, they get denigrated, they get ignored. So that is the most pedestrian way of explaining why this has gone missing, because we're under patriarchy, where women's empowerment, especially women's womb empowerment, is threatening to, patriarchal leadership. But going at a deeper, more shamanic level, if you will, this is really about something that is underneath patriarchy, the basis of our world travail, which in my view and the view of many has to do with the interdimensional beings that are at play and that are controlling things, that are creating the patriarchy that's out of balance masculine to begin with, and that really love to distort and veil earth history, human history, and cosmic history from humanity in order to keep them under control.
Can you describe, because I've had 30, you're my 35th show, and I've had many different shows where people discuss the word, they use aliens or UFOs, and there's a lot of things that were like hidden before, or kept as only crazy people talk about this. Right. But now it's becoming a mainstream discussion, and it's becoming more, information is coming out more from our own government that has been kept from the people.
right.
What is your description of an interdimensional being? What does that look like to you?
Well, there's a whole ecosystem beyond the third dimension of lineages and beings and types of entities. And, just like there's so many different types of humans and so many different types of animals, there's so many different types of interdimensional beings that can come into third dimension, but largely they stay outside of it in higher dimensional frequencies so that we don't see it. It's like in Star Trek, that show where they hear the buzzing, but they don't see the beings around. And that's because they're at a different frequency. They are really there. And I think that one of the things that's happening is, in addition to people literally having visuals of these beings that are coming into 3D, you have people who have been working shamanically and interdimensionally for quite some time through medicines and what have you. And there are many, many more people now taking medicines of all different types and seeing these things on the inner planes themselves and getting downpours of information about these beings, from these beings, learning that some of them are friendly to humans, some of them are allies, and some of them are not. So that's how I would describe a bit of what's going on. The ships can be part of it, but there are beings that don't have ships, or that have light ships, or that are angelics. And some of them are respecting free will, because we are in a free will universe, and they are respecting cosmic law. And others are squeezing cosmic law to within an inch of its life to control and manipulate people to make it look like they're acting on their own free will, but they're not really, ultimately. So enter these avatars and these priestesses who periodically are like, whoa, we got to get a hold of this situation with these negative interdimensionals. And 2,000 years ago or so, as I believe it, was Mother Mary and Jesus and the whole entire Holy Family. That of these divine birth priestesses, these men who were part of this retinue, they were high-level beings themselves, and they're here to try to help this thing out.
This is
messengers and helpers to humanity who have been intimately involved with humanity because they've had human lives, like Mother Mary.
So
they came in.
So when you were writing this, did you feel any, inner connections or information that was coming to you intuitively? Did you feel like you were connecting to the consciousness or energeticness or something of these interdimensional beings, or of Mother Mary herself?
Yes, all the time. And it was mainly through a sense of my own higher self was receiving this information. It was not so much like I saw an apparition of Mother Mary, or some people do, and wow, great. It would be more through direct knowing, or in like that, whoa, that's not my thought exactly. That is beyond what I've known in the past. How am I getting that? And also through synchronicities, remarkable events that would happen. I had healings, and so forth. So I do feel that on some level, I've been in communication with these beings. They've never scared me enough to appear at the foot of my bed in the middle of the night. But, basically their message that I keep getting every time I bring a trouble or a question to them is like, love, and I'm like, well, Mother Mary, what about this? She's like, love. And then the other major thing that I'm receiving is that this is really all about them being here, not to be worshiped, not to be set apart, but rather to be mirrors for what's already inside of us and could be cultivated, so that we are them. Like whenever I come to her, she's like, I am you. I'm just showing you how to develop more of this inside of you, your heart chakra, your womb chakra, your compassion, your releasing of judgment, whatever it is. So They are here to show us what our original divine angelic blueprint was all about and to get that back and running.
Now, you said something earlier about Mother Mary's mother, Anne, knowing that she wouldn't put her baby down on the ground, that she would be holding her. What is if you were to describe to someone what the training or life would be for a baby or child, mother and daughter, what would be going on in this to train or prepare for this immaculate conception?
That's right. And this is precisely what I talk a lot about in the mystery tradition of miraculous conception through the discussion of what we see with Anne and then Mary. There are some sections where it describes what this training involved, and I go deeply into it, like I'm able to see one word and like pull out a whole thing, right? Because of all the research and also my intuition. So just briefly, for example, Anne, first of all, named Mary Mariam, which goes back to an Egyptian word that means divine love. So she's already putting a marker there. So all these Marys running around are from that, what is essentially a priestess title, connecting them with divine love. And before this, Isis, because it was a title connected with Isis, which Rudolf Steiner says was Mother Mary's previous incarnation to the lifetime that we know her as Mother Mary. Anne did a series of things with Mother Mary as an infant and toddler, one of which is she never let the child's feet touch the ground again after she walked 7 steps at 6 months old. An incredible feat right there. And one of the things she did is she had these virgins of the temple come in and do things with her. And it's a little cryptic as to what they do. But what I extrapolate out is that they're purifying her. They're teaching her dances, sacred dances. They're teaching her all sorts of sacred concepts and energetics and so forth, such that when the agreement comes to fruition and Anne and her partner Joachim give Mary to the temple, because this was the pledge that Anne gave as a result of finally conceiving divinely, she was going to give this child to the Hebrew temple. When Mary at 3 years old goes to the Hebrew temple, she knows how to do the sacred dance, and everyone's like, she's like a little Dalai Lama, right? I think that the priestesses have been teaching her bunches of stuff. And then, we hear painfully little about what happens in the temple complex, but I think these virgins kept teaching her. She was working with the high angelics, and so forth. And, all the evidence for that is in the book.
And do you think there was some skills, anything to do with, telepathy or reading people's minds or the knowingness, or was she being taught that
Yeah, I think so. Anything that would be needed for a high level spiritual adept, she was learning either from others or directly through angelic encounter. And this would be a tremendous amount of womb mastery. And then enter Sri Kaleshwar, who's a Hindu saint who lived until he was 36, left the planet, took his samadhi in 2012, and brought through all of this further information about Mother Mary, that she was doing a serious mantra and yantra practice, the sacred chants and the sacred drawings, in order to perfect her womb and really make herself one with Mother Divine. She was also doing a series of yogas, according to him, Atma Khandana yoga, and another one which has to do with bringing people back to life, and then restoring, shifting timelines and restoring. So the idea there is that Sri Kaleshwar said that Mother Mary resurrected Jesus literally through her own womb. After the crucifixion, she took him on her lap, and she literally did the yoga that not only, had given him divine birth to begin with, but then gave him divine rebirth. Some would say he went into the astral plane restored. Others, like Kaleshwar, says he literally, body and soul, went to India and lived out the rest of his natural life in India with, he says, Mary Magdalene, that all that took place over there. So that's very interesting, because apparently there are rock incisions and other documentations indicating that Jesus was in India. So it's fascinating to think of these alternative possibilities and histories that are basically speaking to the much deeper question that these were, just high holy beings who were in service to humanity, period. They weren't here for their own glorification or fun and games, witness the crucifixion, witness the loss of a child on the part of a mother, etc.
Now, I think in the Jewish religion, but as I said, I don't know much about religions, they feel the Messiah hasn't come yet. They're waiting for the coming of the Messiah. Do you think that the condition of the world and how it's going right now, would that warrant another returning of what we're talking about that was happening thousands of years ago, but needs to be now?
Right. So what I think, what I've received in my intuition is that Jesus and others came, many other teachers and so forth came as high holy beings to impart knowledge and healing to vast swaths of humanity. Now, what's happening is the second coming, which is that this energy is fractalized to be accessible by every single person. So the Mother Mary high holy energies, the Jesus holy energies, the John the Baptist holy energies, the Guru, whoever holy energies are all within. Like I was saying earlier, Mother Mary says, I am you, you are me. That's the second coming. But the coming part of it is the cultivation of it inwardly. It's not just like, hey, I'm Jesus.
Right.
It's more like, what does it take to activate your soul, your DNA, to be a walking Jesus? Well, there's your whole karmic healing of all your lineages right there. There's your perfection of your personality. And there's your raising up of your abilities to be giving healings and so forth and so on to people. That's the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
Each and every one of us.
An awakening within the self.
Completely. That's what is happening. All of these trials and travails and bizarrenesses, the strangest ever, in the last 5,000 years on planet Earth that's been going on, are all door openers and initiators. And people have been having the worst weird time of their life. Whatever their beliefs about the health situation that went on, everybody's back is up against the wall. They're going through a sieve. If they didn't go through the sieve the last 10 years, like some of us, they're going through it now. They may not even be knowing what the hell is happening. But I'm here to suggest that this is part of a global turning where we are all initiating into our Messiahhood. And it doesn't matter what your tradition is, what your lineage is, what your race is, what your gender is. This is available to everyone because it's the way that ideally we would want to be. We want to be walking around in the Eden energy like we once were, Lemuria and pre-Lemuria. We want to restore that prior to the advent of these negative beings who were like, hey, we're taking over.
I'm noticing maybe this is all coming to me as we're talking. So I'm just thinking about how, like, women have never been in politics, and now women are finally getting in more positions in politics, and men have been running the world and politics. And if more of this divine feminine energy was brought into the political arena, that maybe there would be a softening and more of a caring and compassionate government forming.
That's right. And guess what? Politics itself would dissolve.
Mhm.
Because politics is largely, the way it's been created, is largely a patriarchal enterprise. So is corporate, so is medicine, so is education. All of these things have the imprint of these negative interdimensional beings. And one of the major things they did was to get the feminine out of the way.
Yes.
On the human level and on the astral plane level, which is why we have all these horrible stories about rapes of goddesses and so forth and so on, because that crap has been going on. And now women, human women, are awakening and saying, no, my womb is sacred. My womb is empowered. You cannot do this, that, and the other thing to my womb. You know, and how do I connect my womb up with my heart and with my third eye for seeing? That's what we want to be doing. And then we would create completely different structures. Yes, we would have structure, you know, and the angelics would help us, but it's going to look differently.
Listen, I don't necessarily use the word miracle or whatever the thing is, the word, but in my 30s, I had cervical cancer, and I was told I would never have any more children. And they cut out half my cervix. And the doctor said, no, it's not possible. And if you did, it would be very difficult, la, 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 but your chances are 0 or whatever. And also they said I'd only have 2 to 5 years to live. And none of those particular things happened. I overcame the cancer and did all this healing work with the Huichol Indians, which is what I feel helped me to cure the
That's
cancer.
right.
It wasn't just having the tumor removed.
Exactly.
And I had to heal on a spiritual level as well as the physical.
That's the thing.
But I then did
Ingredient.
conceive a son who was born at home in my bed at what the midwife said was a clinically perfect birth at 35. And then at 41, I had another child, which I felt like I kind of commanded this one.
Right.
So I was with my husband and I said, you know, I just want you to know, if I'm not pregnant by 40, I said, I got to close the door, because after 40, I think it's getting a little up there. I don't think I'd be able to be raising children, etc. On my 40th birthday, we were in a fancy hotel in San Francisco celebrating my birthday, and I conceived a child that day.
Blessed be.
And she was born at home underwater in a bathtub birth. But it was the last time that she listened to me, was that day when I said to her, I'm giving birth today. I'm tired. This is, you know, I'm old. I can't do this anymore. It's a day after you're due. Let's have a baby now. And I was determined to give birth that day. And at 1:06, I gave birth to my daughter, Tasha. And as I said, that was the last time she listened to anything that I advised. But there was some powerful connection between me and these births and these experiences that had nothing to do with the medical information I was receiving.
Yes, thank goddess that they didn't, because that medical information is completely negative reptilian energy half the time. Not to say there are not well-meaning gynecologists and so forth and so on, but they're all indoctrinated into an anti-life propaganda, which they don't realize half the time.
I think this is one of the reasons of the rises of so many cesarean births.
That's right.
Because I think men decided, oh, we don't have enough time. I got to get out on the golf course or whatever. I don't know. But that there were so many times where you think, gee, I think that person could have gone through and had this baby.
Absolutely, it could have. No, I mean, there's something important about going through the birth canal that is missing if the child comes out through the side, quote unquote, and not Maya's side. Yeah, all of that, all of this OBGYN stuff that's going on right now, the removal of uteruses, blah, 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 blah. My God, you know, they had wanted to take practically my whole entire uterus when all I had was a little cyst on an ovary. And I had to absolutely put my foot down around that in tears and so forth. It was a horrific thing without even family support, but I knew, no, you're not going to take this, that, and the other thing, because these things are still operating and giving me power as a woman. So the gynecological establishment really needs an overhaul from the shamanic perspective. And, you're lucky that you didn't have any programs, like your father did you a favor, that you didn't have any religious programs coming in. Maybe you were missing a little connectivity with the divine, but what happened? You went straight to the Native American peoples, and you've been a shamanic advocate, for decades now, connecting with these people, helping them, being helped by them, bringing their words out. It's amazing.
Yeah, in fact, I received a award from the government of Mongolia for my participation, for 10-year participation. And I'm the first woman ever. I've done a lot of first women kind of things that women hadn't done. And the first women to receive this medal of honor of, working with the Mongolian people. Then they gave me an honorary PhD in the University of Science in Mongolia. And then one of the shamans we had met at a conference I spoke at in Mongolia came back to the United States and then decided I needed to be initiated as a Buryat Mongolian shaman. So I went through that initiation, and it was quite a 6-day, it was nothing like I ever said, oh, I want to be a shaman. This was never in my particular thing, but it presented itself for me. And I've been so grateful because it gave me, I don't know, a cloak or something to protect me and do the kind of things I do with people that have to do with, blessings or whatever you want to call the words. And I've always been very grateful to have that and to have had that experience. And also that everything that was needed for the shamanic ceremony with no translator, I would just appear. And this is one of my scientific things that, I've done work with a lot of different researchers as a subject, but nobody's ever talked about. And when I mentioned it to one of my scientist friends, I think it was Dean Radin, he said, you need funding for that. That's why nobody's done this. You'd have to have funding. But I realized that I have telepathically connected to different cultures, and not one time, but many times. And one was in the Huichols, and one was in Japan, and this was with a Mongolian shaman. We do not speak the same language. How are we communicating telepathically? Where exactly what she wants, I come and bring the herb or the cloth or the whatever the thing it was. Or how do I understand in the Huichols what's going on when I've never been there before, and yet I know what's happening?
Yeah, because true communication rides above the Tower of Babel scenario that we've got going on here with all these languages, and the only way we can communicate is through the cumbersome means of three-dimensional language. The angelics and the interdimensional beings all communicate with us and with one another through telepathy. It's instant knowing. And so you are developing that capacity within yourself. That is a capacity that everybody has to develop or can. And, it's great to practice at it.
I don't practice that. It just comes naturally for me, but
right? Because you already are gifted with it.
I just find it a fascinating, because they do things, I've been in different experiments where they're trying to see about, like one was with a neuroscientist, and it showed during telepathy that there was a change of blood flow in my brain during the time of telepathy. And this was all documented at the Washington University Hospital for a show that was shown in Japan. But my feelings about all this is that I think they get some of the scientists kind of get stuck in some of this and don't realize that there's so much more, but it doesn't have words to go with it. And that's why I just say, when I say it's just a knowingness, I can't really explain what happens. So we're getting down to the end of our hour. And what I would like to do is, I have 2 questions. One is, if there was anything else about your book you would like to tell our viewers, besides the fact that they should go and get this because they'll have never read a book like this before. But I want to know more about your school and some of the things you offer. And if you could tell our audience your website or where the best way will be. I'll have information on the description, but some people are just listening audio, and I'd love for them to hear where they can find out about the amazing classes you have, etc. So that was a double question. So first we're ending the book, and then we're doing a review of your amazing school that's been around for 10 years now.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yes. So regarding the book, I would say that now, as this audio is coming out, this show is coming out, it's the perfect time to get it and read it so you can really understand the reason for the season, the holidays here that are upon us. You will go so much more deeply as a result of this book. And this book is easy to digest. I have been shocked. I mean, I wrote it with the idea of it being readable, and it is by every Tom, Dick, Harry, Jane, and Susan. All right. It's people are saying, wow, I read your book. I'm halfway through. I bet and even though I don't know, somehow I'm getting it, even though these are complex ideas, it's because of how I've written it.
That was how I felt. I thought, my God, she's brilliant. What is there going to be a lot of words I won't understand? But as I started reading, I understood everything you were expressing.
Yeah, I somehow was able to do that. I mean, it was really a big thing for me because my first two books are so academic. Hardly anybody has looked at them or read them. And I'm like, no, this one has to be accessible. So I'd say, get that and let it seep into you so that you can truly enjoy this holiday on a whole new level. And then about my school, it's called, as mentioned earlier, Seven Sisters Mystery School. The Seven Sisters refers to those seven Pleiadian mothers of the world. Okay, that's kind of a little basis, but that's not by any means all that we're about. I have so many courses, so many free offerings, so many things we're doing. In this holiday season, I'm offering a cacao ceremony where people can have the experience of becoming the divine Christ Sophia light. That medicine will help facilitate that, along with the journey that I'll lead everyone on. At the end of the month on my YouTube channel, Marguerite Rigoglioso, I'm going to be giving an oracle from a sacred medicine state using a medicine Santa Maria that is cannabis, that will be a higher octane kind of oracle that you can bring your questions to about our world and about the new year and what's happening. And then I've got, for this season, we have this, what we're calling Trinity of Mary offerings. It's a sequence of guided meditations that are inspired by Mother Mary, some workshops with more and deeper information of the kind that you and I talked about today. And then we have another one. I think anyway, there's a third. Oh, yes, the Mother Mary Mystery Teachings, which I think I might have mentioned. No, it's half price. So all of those are at half price. And that will, again, help you go deeply into this holiday season. Highly recommended. So that's just a start. Poke around, sevensistersmysteryschool.com. There's lots of free stuff. And I'm always available for one-on-one consultations as well.
Well, I want to thank you so much for this very, very wonderful December, beginning of the holiday talk. And I want to thank you from a small, medium, at large for being our guest. And I'll be with you in just one moment as I close. I want to thank all of you listeners for being with us here today. You know that we try to bring you different guests bi-weekly so that we have all sorts of different people here. And I want to thank you for subscribing, liking, sharing. We love getting your comments. That's my favorite part. And letting you know that we'll be here for 2023, where I'm hoping for you to be able to purchase my book that should be coming out, A Small, Medium, at Large, finally, after all these years. And, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. And I want to thank my team that supports me, which is my husband, who writes the descriptions, my daughter, who posts all of our shows, my son, who does all the editing and inserts the music. So it's a nice family participation, and I want to thank them for doing this for their mom and their wife. So have a very great and wonderful week. We'll see you again soon, and a beautiful, beautiful holiday ahead. And thanks. Remember, share your stories, because stories can heal. Bye.
Bye.